So I was asked to write a paper, like a nerd, about my roots. And immediately, like a nerd, I thought of video games. I played video games my whole life, so that seems like a pretty easy starting point. It's pretty easy to say that the games I played shaped the person that I am now. And it shaped the things that I do. Art is iterative after all. I run a YouTube channel where I talk about video games, so obviously I like video games. Crazy, I know. You guys like my mouth sounds? I really need to just finish this video. Oh my god, it's been what, like half a year since I made my last video? So at first I was researching game writers. Game writing is a field I want a career in, so I looked into people who wrote my favorite games at different stages in my life. So I started with Michael Stemla. Stemla's not a well-known game writer, but hey, I know who he is, so cue the happy royalty-free music. He wrote for Monkey Island, which I never played, but I had a family member who really liked it, so I heard about it when I was a kid. More significantly, though, sorry, Monkey Island. He wrote for Star Wars Battlefront 2, which was my favorite game like my whole childhood. See, Stemla worked for LucasArts, which was a division of Lucasfilm, both of which are now defunct thanks to Daddy Disney. So he made a great Star Wars game, and then he had to leave LucasArts, and he went to go work for Telltale, and he made The Wolf Among Us, a very story-driven game that I loved as an edgy 14-year-old. And then Telltale went and, died. And I couldn't really find what Stemla was working on now. I didn't find what I was looking for, and I didn't really know what that meant yet. Good old Mikey is still a cool guy though, and his games were very influential in shaping the Star Wars-loving, edgy 20-year-old that I am today. So after grappling with the fact that I am officially old now, I started to look elsewhere, and I looked at Hideo Kojima. Kojima is monolithic. Everybody loves Kojima. He made the Metal Gear Solid series, which was a favorite of mine. I played every release in the series up till his not-so-amicable departure from Konami. I mean, Konami is basically vilified at this point, and in no small part due to their treatment of this boy right here. Kojima's games, going all the way back to Snatcher in 1988, are marked by their campiness, their political commentary, and their more meta moments. Now, capital G gamers might not realize that him saying the military-industrial complex bad was political, but that's not actually their fault. Kojima probably just put it in there by accident. I mean, we all know that games aren't political, right? And I think my love for camp is pretty much attributed to Kojima, as is my love for games that have something really important to say. You know, the guy who wrote the scene where Revolver Ocelot and Naked Snake get attacked by wasps, so Revolver Ocelot spins his revolver so fast that the wasps can't hurt him, and then you fight a bee-man. A real masterclass in writing, if you ask me. Somehow, that absolute mouthful was the only thing I got on my first take this entire recording session. But anyways, I still had this feeling that something was being left unsaid. But I still had Kan Gao, the creator of Freebird Games and the writer for To the Moon and Finding Paradise. You see, I love sad stories, and I love stories about memories. Before I was 12, I didn't. But when I was 12, I played a game about a man who felt that he had never truly connected with his wife, so he hired a company to go into his brain and risk absolutely destroying his memories just so that he could die a little more satisfied with fake memories in his head. Thank you, Kan Gao, you made me depressed. But in all seriousness, this is the first time that I really loved a serious story. And seeing such a small game reach mainstream success like that really inspired me to want to make games and inspired me to want to tell stories like this. And the game was a healthy distraction from issues that 12-year-old me was facing that we really don't gotta get into right now. But I love games as a storytelling medium, and this is why. There we go. So much of myself can be traced back to Kan Gao's To the Moon. I like being sad. That's it. That's my character arc. Just kidding, I still felt like something was missing, but I think I finally figured out what it was. If we want to talk about why games were so developmental to me, we need to talk about emergent narrative. Basically, a game has two types of narrative. Well, there's actually a bunch of different types of narratives, but I'm lazy, so we're going to talk about two. There is the deliberate narrative, which doesn't really have a name, but I'm a simple internet funny man, so that's what I'm going to go with. The deliberate narrative is the basic written story. Think Master Chief Fights the Covenant. Think Hero's Journey. Stories that have dialogue options or even multiple endings would still be considered deliberate narratives because all of those options were still pre-planned. They were still deliberately written. Essentially, this is the groundwork narrative a game seeks to offer through its text. So what is emergent narrative? Well, thank you for asking, Alex. I know that you actually asked if I would play Kingdom Hearts, but I won't. Instead, I'm gonna talk about emergent narrative, so just shut up. I'm kidding, I love you. I'm getting off topic, but an emergent narrative instead arises from the player's interactions with the game's systems, or other players within a game. And you'll find that these interactions really stick with a player. Now, explaining these interactions can be kind of a daunting task, so I'm gonna let Smash do it for me. I'm just kidding, idiot. God, Smash can't talk. I'm just gonna use it as an example, dummy. So imagine you and a friend sit down on the couch, before current world event, and play a round of Smash. Even though you're playing within the developer's defined rules, your own story is gonna develop. You guys are gonna have some funny banter, obnoxious insults are gonna be thrown, cool plays are gonna be made, hype is gonna ensue, there's gonna be some close calls, and eventually, one of you is going to be declared a winner. And with or without realizing it, you and that friend have just created a story together. Whether it be a full story with a beginning, a middle, and an end, or just a funny anecdote, you and that friend have just made a memory together through your interaction with that game. You remember that time that the funny Sans man blew up the funny Minecraft man? Emergent narrative, right, friend? And that's how I assume you guys would reminisce about it. For another multiplayer example, let's look at Among Us. Bro, that's like so Emergent, oh my god. An actual conflict arises within your friend group or a group of strangers as you try to find the imposter. And as distrust builds, alliances form, and a pretty standard narrative forms every game. And every game is gonna end up being pretty unique because they're gonna have different turns and twists as the imposter is revealed, or isn't. I would like to take a second to talk about the time that I was the only imposter and had like a 50-second kill cooldown and managed to win twice because I'm actually the main character. And the developers intended for these stories to be told, but the difference is they only ever suggest them. There's no pre-written breakdown about how you should tackle each game. The game just tells you its fairly simple rules through very light use of text and then just drops the player in. They instead opt to allow the player's control of the text, either through the provided chat or through an outside mode of communication like Discord or a phone call. And just allowing a group of players to interact with the game's mechanics is such a special experience. It's not only why we tell stories about ourselves playing games, but also why we enjoy watching esports players or other gaming content creators. And that's gaming, with a capital mic pop. The creators of Among Us admit that they didn't expect the game to be so personality-driven, to become so popular among content creators. But it's to be expected. Emergent stories are entertaining to watch. And of course it's going to be fun to watch people with big personalities interact with a game so built around communication. And now that I've gone on yet another tangent, let's talk about one more example, this time not one that's reliant on multiplayer. Let's talk about the Funny Steve game. Minecraft is so open-ended that stories are gonna vary wildly. But even two players who set out to kill the game's end boss, the Ender Dragon, will still have incredibly different experiences. One player may have a story about that time they fell down a hole into lava and lost everything, while another will boast about that time they defended a village from pillagers twice in a row without taking damage. I'm very much the former, by the way. I couldn't even get footage for the latter because I am bad at video games. And as I've said a million times, both those players are gonna remember and tell those stories. It's 4 in the morning, I can't think of new ways to word these things. Emergent stories are intrinsically a part of the gaming experience. So why was I talking about them in my rhetoric class and not in my game culture class? Guys, it turns out art school is actually pretentious? What the fuck? Well, because I found in researching this essay that it is the emergent stories that have had the most profound effect on me. I'll occasionally forget specific story beats of games I haven't played in a while. Forgive me, gamers, for I have sinned. I played too many games. But I will never forget the pride I felt when I got through all of Hollow Knight without a guide. I will never forget that time I made a friend in a Halo Reach lobby and absolutely dominated the next couple of rounds with him. I'll never forget attempting a stealth-only playthrough in MGS3 and narrowly getting caught time and time again. I'll never forget the aforementioned Among Us game, because I'm a god. And I will never forget teaching my little brothers how to play video games on Battlefront 2 on our old PS2. When thinking about how the field of video games formed me, I realized it wasn't the text they brought to life, it wasn't the striking images they left me with, it was the friends I made along the way. But like actually, it was the unique experiences I had while playing them, either by myself or with the people around me. And those experiences were only provided to me by the affordances of the field of video games. So my predecessors were still those same game devs, just not in the way that I originally thought. And I think that's pretty cool. Thank you guys so much for watching this school assignment turned YouTube video turned school assignment. I know it was a little weird, but hey, I finally got the motivation to make a YouTube video after like 6 months. All my sources are in the description for whatever facts were actually in this video, and I will see you guys in another 6 months.